Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're unpacking a phrase from our source material that, well, honestly sounds like a bit of a mouthful. The pathology of chronic visceral venous congestion. I know, it's dense, but trust me, every single word in that phrase was chosen for a very specific reason, and together they paint this incredibly vivid clinical picture. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you see these multisyllable medical terms all stacked up, it's super easy for your eyes to just glaze right over them, right? It just looks like an intimidating wall of text. But actually, scratch that. It's better to think of it as a tightly packed clinical blueprint. Once we actually slow down and unpack this exact phrase, you'll see it transform into this highly logical step-by-step map. And it maps out a physical condition with a truly profound systemic impact on the body.
So the immediate question we've got to ask ourselves is, what does this actually mean for the body, practically speaking? To wrap our heads around this, let's stop looking at the phrase as one big, intimidating chunk. We're going to do a structured deconstruction instead. By isolating each piece, word by word, we can see exactly how our source material builds this medical concept from the ground up to explain a very specific physiological failure. All right, starting right at the beginning with pathology. By using this word, the source is deliberately setting the clinical stage for us. It's basically flashing a neon sign saying, hey, we are dealing with a recognized, overarching medical condition here. We aren't just looking at a couple of random isolated symptoms or some temporary blip in the body's baseline function. No, we are firmly established in identifying a systemic disease state. It's the text's way of flagging that we're mapping out a condition with a definable, predictable pattern across the entire human body. Next up, the source adds this absolutely critical modifier, chronic. And man, this word carries a lot of weight. It introduces the heavy burden of time. We are definitely not talking about a sudden acute emergency that just pops up and resolves quickly. The implications of chronicity here mean the body has literally been enduring long-term adaptive strain. It's a sustained, relentless hemodynamic pressure. It tells us the condition is something the body has been trying its hardest to manage and, well, slowly failing to compensate for over a really prolonged period.
Bringing it all together, we hit visceral venous congestion, which defines the core physical failure. Visceral means we're looking deep inward at the vital organs, and venous means we're specifically tracking the return pathways, the veins. Now, add congestion to that. It indicates a mechanical backup. Imagine a persistent systemic traffic jam, but instead of cars, it's blood trapped within these internal organ systems. It is a clear-cut mechanical breakdown in the fluid dynamics of the body's deep circulatory routes.
So let's look at the exact excerpt from the source text. It says, chronic venous congestion in lung and liver. That right there is the core sentence we are decoding today. See how the text takes that abstract clinical concept we just broke down and grounds it in a stark anatomical reality? It doesn't just state that this congestion happens somewhere out in the void, it pinpoints exactly where this sustained venous backup is taking place. The text cleanly identifies two very specific organ destinations for us, the lung and the liver. Think about it. We've already defined the overarching disease state, we've accounted for the massive element of time, and we've pinpointed the exact mechanism of venous congestion. Now, the source hands us the exact anatomical addresses where this whole breakdown manifests, the lung and the liver. These are our primary, concrete locations for this condition.
And this brilliantly illustrates such a compelling dynamic from our source material. I mean, just think about the stark contrast between these two organs for a second. Your lungs, they're up in your chest dealing with air, respiration, and the rapid, delicate exchange of gases. Your liver, on the other hand, is basically a massive, heavy-duty chemical processing plant and filter sitting way down in your abdomen. They serve totally different primary functions, they live in completely different environments, and yet they are entirely united under this one overarching medical condition.
The unifying factor here is just undeniable. They both experience chronic venous congestion. Like we said, despite having totally different daily jobs, the source uniquely binds the airy, delicate tissues of the lungs together with the dense, heavy processing tissues of the liver through this exact same pathology. A persistent, stubborn backup of venous flow impacts them both simultaneously. The text is essentially drawing a bold, direct clinical line right between them.
Which leads us to a pretty incredible realization. If one single pathology, this chronic venous congestion, can map identically to such totally distinct vital organs, just how deeply interconnected is the body's visceral system? It really forces us to realize that the body is this ultimate closed loop. A pressure backup in one area
literally ripples outward to affect entirely different systems at the exact same time. It's just an absolute testament to the phenomenal, interconnected architecture of the human body. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack all of this on today's Explainer.